officially here for this.
Inmate revolt?
Pull me closer, make me obey. Put it in me, I wanna feel you in me, and swallow your soul. I wanna swallow your
I promised you guys we were going to see what we can do in terms of a Steam Machine competitor build, and we're going to do that today. We've got a lot to talk about because there's a million different ways you can go when you start talking about the budget at which you have with Steam Machine. It's depressing. The whole scenario PC is depressing, but we're going to see what we can do today around that top tier price point because I don't know. I don't think we can do it very easily in the form factor I want to do it in the lower price points. So let's see what we can do. Oh yeah, and we're using our friends at Micro Center, obviously, to get it done. Okay. Again, everyone's kind of doing the whole like, what could you build for the same price now? This is not a new tech concept. I even did this back in November, actually, at the Phoenix store opening, where I built that machine that was supposed to potentially compete, which I guess is kind of still sort of relevant, considering the fact that the prices we chose back then definitely would beat the Steam Machine today. The problem is, prices since November have obviously gone up on so many different things. A lot of other people doing these videos are just showing what PC you could build for the same price point, but I don't think that's apples to apples with the Steam Machine. The Steam Machine was supposed to offer a console type experience in like a living room setting, right? Kind of allowing console gamers to maybe make a transition to PC without it feeling like a PC. So I'm gonna try and replicate that today. So because I'm going small form factor, the prices are going to be higher than they would be with their full-size components. So when you start going with like ITX and small form factor coolers and stuff, the prices go up the smaller it gets, which seems counterintuitive, but you shrink anything down, it gets more expensive. So I want to put that out there. But there are some amazing deals, obviously, at Micro Center when it comes to power spec PCs, starting all the way down to like $899, which would still blow the doors off of any Steam box or Steam Machine. I keep calling it Steam box, so we're gonna start there. So this is the Fractal Terra. It's 169 bucks. I really like it though. I mean, a lot of ventilation, obviously all over it. I've already done a build in this before. It's got the little like gull wing doors that open up to give you access to everything on the inside. It's not bad. It's $169. And I did call it the Node. It's actually the Ridge, based on the kind of how the Node was. And that's this guy right here. This is what I was saying. This gives me a lot of like a console feel, I think. Obviously, when it comes to footprint, it's almost the same depth, slightly longer. Here, I'll line up in the back. There. It's slightly longer than the Terra, but it's quite a bit narrower and taller. So you still have room for a triple slot graphics card, and this whole upper chamber right here is for your graphics card cooling. So it's separated with motherboard on one side, motherboard on the bottom actually, and GPU on the top. So it's gonna use a riser and such. It's got this little fabric right here as part of an intake, but there's no fans in this. Actually, yes there is. There is one fan, it looks like, that's blowing towards the GPU, but I've never actually built in the Ridge. It's one reason why I kind of wanted to approach it from that aspect. The Ridge is only $15 cheaper, but right now, 15 bucks, like every dollar we can save is going to help us maximize our performance. And yes, we are playing the min-maxing game here when it comes to pricing. Okay, we got the Ridge. Now here's the other thing too, form factor, that means ITX. They have ITX boards that are A-series AMD boards starting at $109, or we can go all the way up to like $500 if we want another board. Clearly, 500 bucks is out of our budget. So we are going to, the original parts I had chosen had, I think it was $150 or $160 board in there, but because we're not gonna be doing any overclocking, we're not gonna be doing anything crazy, I don't see any reason why we can't run the cheapest ITX board in this. We just need it to power on and do its job and hopefully have, you know, a decent amount of RAM support, right? So let's take a quick look at the different boards that are available to us, because I want to, if I can save 50 bucks on the board, that's perfect. Like from 150 something down to 109, that's a huge chunk towards other stuff that's gonna matter outside the motherboard. Okay, so this is the board I initially had found online that I was gonna use. It's $169 for the B650i Lightning. But they have the A620 for $129. It's an AM5 board, that's a gigabyte. I have, like I said, no problems with stepping down from a B series to an A series board. We're not doing any overclocking, we're not throwing a high-end CPU in there. It just needs to connect all our crap together. And it's $40 cheaper than the one I had. I must have been on crack the other day when I saw a $109 board, because we just looked at everything, and there is no $109 board. There is an $89 board with AM4 socket if you want to go even cheaper. I just don't want to go with a dead-end product line that's AM4 right now. AM5 is going to be supported through 2029. I want to know we have an upgrade path if we wanted to later. So we're going to go with that. That saves us 40 bucks. The Gigabyte A620i AX AMD AM5 Mini ITX motherboard. It's ultra durable. Let's test that.
What's her deal?
Well, she went to Metro and saved over $250. She got the new Samsung Galaxy A17 5G for free and no activation fees. Get that more for your money feeling only at Metro.
You're not supposed to do this in the store, but I can because I'm special. So this is the board. I want to show you. Literally, nothing super special about it. Now here's the thing. The drive we're going to go with actually has a heatsink on it because there is no heatsink on this. Now we are going with the downfire small form factor or low profile cooler, which would provide a little airflow to that. But that should be out of the way and not interfere with our cooler, hopefully. But I want to get some airflow on the drive. Drives don't need to be cold, but they also do thermally throttle if they get too warm. So I want to have some active airflow, or at least some heat sinking to the drive. Okay, so CPUs initially in the cart, I had the 9600X. It's a 6-core, 12-thread part. I considered the 7700X, which is an 8-core, 16-thread part. Now I'm considering the 7600X because it is still a 6-core, 12-thread part. Fairly power efficient, not as power efficient as 9000 series, but it's price efficient. It's $129 versus $159. So I don't, look, even though we're not gonna like go higher thread count than what's in the Steam machine, we are clearly gonna go higher IPC, we're gonna go higher clock speeds, higher power, but we're gonna get way more performance than what the Steam machine is capable of. So we are gonna go with the 7600X. Nice and power efficient because remember, now we're limited by our cooler. So that's why we can't go throw in like a 7800X 3D or anything in there because we do have to go with a very low profile cooler. RAM though, we're gonna be doing a single stick of DDR5, 16 gig stick. Remember, DDR5 is dual bank, so you still will get dual channel performance out of a single stick. That is simply because of cost. Because I think it's gonna cost like 150 bucks for one stick of 6,000 mega transfers G-Skill. I thought it was 150 for a single stick of no frills RAM. It's 204. It is $80, well $75 more than our CPU. Okay, so initially in my cart for storage, I had a 1 terabyte 3D NAND. How do you say that brand? Clev?
Clev, yeah.
Clev, yeah.
It's a Hynix subbrand.
Right, it's a Hynix product. $169 for a 1 terabyte Gen 3. Fortunately, for $10 more, there's a Crucial P310 Gen 4 that also has a heatsink on it. The other drive I had didn't have a heatsink, so that 10 bucks alone is getting us one gen newer. So we're going from like 3,500 megabytes read speed max to 7,100. Yeah, 7,100. Oh, 71. Yeah.
Damn.
So, you know the crazy part about the pricing? There's no lack of them. It's like, there's no lack of them. That's what's crazy about the price. I mean, this isn't a Micro Center problem. They're buying it for just as much as more as it's costing. But it's just so weird to me. There's no, I mean, RAM looks a little sparse. Drives apparently might get that way someday though, they're saying. Okay, so the important part here though is this is not a bundle. And that makes this more relatable than a typical Micro Center build where we're like, hey, if you have access to bundles, look at this stupid deal you can get. Now we need cooler and PS time believing that? It's only a nice cooler aisle real quick. Okay, so this is the Thermalright AXP90-X53 Black HTPC/ITX low profile CPU cooler. Yeah, it is $53.99. There's a Noctua here also that has a little bit better cooling capability, but it's also $20 more. I don't really want to spend back the money we've been saving, or I don't think I'm going to gain anything. According to an internet search, they claim 150 watt TDP. I have a really hard time believing that. It's only a 92 millimeter fan. You can see we have our hold down bracket right here, obviously in some way. There are cheaper places to get an SFX power supply. Micro Center doesn't have a great selection of them. Hey, y'all. Okay, so CPUs initially in the cart, I had the 9600X. It's a 6-core, 12-thread part. I considered the 7700X, which is an 8-core, 16-thread part. Now I'm considering the 7600X because it is still a 6-core, 12-thread part. Fairly power efficient, not as power efficient as 9000 series, but it's price efficient. It's $129. So I've got like 465 bucks that I can spend on a GPU. Unfortunately, the price jump between like the $300 cards and up is like 300 to 500 and something. So there's not a whole lot of extra to play with in there. So what I'm gonna see right now is what card we can find that fits in there. I'm gonna go NVIDIA because right now the only AMD cards that are here is like an RX 580, which is like 10 years old, or like a 9060, 9060 XT and all that, which is out of our price point, I think. I think going with something like a 5060 Ti would be better performance overall than like a 9060. So that's the play, we have to figure that out. If I can find the cheapest card in that category and it leaves me with some budget, I might look to see like, okay, is there maybe a next step up on the drive? Or that's about the only place I could really add more money. Adding more money won't give me better RAM in this instance, so. All right, let's go see what we got graphics-wise. We've got $465 to play with. Okay, so they have a 9060 XT 16 gig for $420. We have $460 left in the budget. There's also 5060 Ti 8 gigs for $359. This is where it's hard because, yeah, we save a bit of money by going with the 8 gig card, but we kind of limit ourselves in terms of future frame buffer. I mean, it's kind of universally accepted at this point that 8 gigs is just not great, but then again, we're also talking about a low mid-tier card that's never going to be doing high frame rate in higher resolutions anyway. So now I have to decide, do I want to save the 60 bucks and throw that into a larger drive, or do I want to go with just the better overall performance?
Gym Monster 2 is an all-in-one home workout system that has a variety of resistances, different angles.
Okay, so doing the typical thing, it's so funny. I have firsthand experience with all of these cards, but the problem is all of the data sets are like jumbled in my head and I can't remember exactly what was what, right? So looking at the charts and looking at other people's charts and stuff, the 9060 XT is about 5 to 7% slower than the 5060 Ti, where frame buffer is not the limiting factor. So many AAA titles now, especially in 1440p, where this will be able to play no problem, where the Steam machine truly is a 1080p machine, can easily exceed 8 gigabytes at AAA titles at that resolution. And then the 1% lows severely suffer on the NVIDIA card with only 8 gigabytes. We can't afford the 16 gig, or that would have been a no-brainer. So with that said, we decided to go ahead and go with the 9060 XT. 10 watts more on power draw, not a big deal. Obviously, we have more than enough headroom on the PSU. So that is our system. Okay, so we're currently at $1,408.92 pre-tax, before the $10 price match for the PSU. Actually, I should check all this stuff on Amazon to know the truth. I'm not even kidding. Do it, they'll match. So anyway, so we're at $1,408, so $1,398. The 2 terabyte model without the controller is $1,349. The 2 terabyte model with the controller is $1,428. You get a little bit of a controller price discount with the bundle because it's $99 normally. It's like 60 bucks or something like that, whatever it is with the package deal. So we're landing like right in between there, which is kind of where I was expecting to land. I think I said $1,400 was my budget I was kind of shooting for here. I came in $1.08 under that. Not bad. Okay, so I guess all that's left to do now is double check all my prices on Amazon real quick and then go back to the studio and build it. Actually, I think this will make a pretty interesting mini segment on its own. Amazon price versus Micro Center price. So the 7600X on Amazon is $146. It's $129.99 here. Micro Center win for sure. Okay, the motherboard here, that is a $129.99 board. So it's an exact match. So our RAM, this will be interesting here. $29.99 here. Micro Center win for sure. Okay, the $146. It's $100. $29.99 here. Micro Center win for sure. Okay, the motherboard here, that is a $129.99 board. So it's an exact match. So our RAM, this will be interesting here, $269.99 on Amazon. So they're still $65 under Amazon pricing. Okay, let's move on to the P310, shall we? See, I could find the one that doesn't have the cooler for $169 on Amazon, but I can't find the one with the heatsink on it. So, okay. Graphics card, $448. Wow. Okay, how about the Ridge? It's $144. Ooh, Pablo, you owe me another $10. Okay. Look, the moral of the story here is do this. Take the time to do this and do it right in front of the salesman. He'd rather sell it to you at a discount than you walk away and not sell anything at all to match a price. That cooler on Amazon, $22. So they say it has to be sold and shipped. So after a little percussive persuasion, they will honor the price. Because it's sold by Thermalright. So if it was like sold by so-and-so Joe's Computers, right, and it's drop shipped by Amazon, they wouldn't do that. But because it is Thermalright and shipping from Amazon, they're gonna price match that. Because $53 down to $22, that's $30 back, so now I'm at $13.58. All right, now we can go ahead and get on out of here. A good $50, $60 cheaper than I was expecting. It's a lot deeper, but it's down by the remote. But that's the one. All right, here it is. It was pretty straightforward to build in, nothing crazy. I do wish we can get a bigger cooler on there while installing Bazite. We did see it hit 90C, but then it dropped back down to 80. Didn't go in and do any power tuning. I didn't do any power limiting or any of that. I could go in and do some more efficient power tuning with this if I wanted, but I just wanted to see how out of the box experience was. So the only thing this really kind of can't do, but the Steambox can or Steam Machine can, which is power on by the remote. Now we can power down by the remote, but that's the one thing that like console experience is really nice is that you can just, hold the button with the controller and it'll turn itself on. So I'm gonna do this like a barbarian, like a Neanderthal. Did it turn on? Yeah, okay, it's just so quiet. There's no light and it's just so quiet. Anyway, front connectivity. Did it turn on? Yeah, okay, it's just so quiet. There's no light and it's just so quiet. Anyway, front connectivity, USB-C to a USB 3 and a power button and a combo headphone jack. We won't be using that because of the fact that this is intended to be a console experience. But as you can see, we're booting into Bazite. If you want to know how to do that, we actually have another video where we already showed you how to install Bazite. This just happens to be the Steam big picture version of Bazite with AMD graphics card support because this is an AMD. So if you have an NVIDIA card, you need to grab the NVIDIA one. I'll put a link to the other video in the description of this one if you're curious how to install Bazite. But there's the Bazite install, and we have it going right to Steam Big Picture. So this is about as much of a console experience as I think you're gonna personally be able to get. Now you can see right here, the CPU says it's at 91C. So it's at 91C right now because we are installing a game. Now this CPU can technically do 95C, okay? I think technically I would probably go into the OS or the BIOS and probably do a little negative millivolt on there, like a -20 or maybe a -25. That'd probably help a lot. I know I'm not really strengthening my argument of this is a console replacement if you have to go in there and start changing things, but right, it's handling itself. 90C is what they are rated to run at all day long for their life. We as PC enthusiasts don't accept that, but that is what it's rated for. I think if we could actually see the temperatures of your PS5 and your Xbox, they're probably running just as hot. So just wanted to point that out there, but we are limited in the cooler that we could put in. To be honest, I don't do this often. I'm a keyboard and mouse guy, but I pushed it out of the way just for this anyway. Unable to sync, well that's fine, I haven't even played it yet. So it shows our button layout, cool. Our CPU dropped down to 62C when it wasn't installing anymore. So it's just when it's under that heavy install load, but right now it's at 86, 84, 83, 81. We'll see what it is in game. Now I'm realistically targeting 1440p, but I think 1080p high settings should be realistic. Okay, so I put it to 1080p and we're gonna prioritize balanced. I think that makes sense for a console attempt here. Okay, so in game right now we're at 77 or 82C, 133, 135 FPS. I mean, CPU runs a little warm. We could absolutely do some power tuning to that. I think we've seen enough already to know how well this game's gonna run. Okay, so let's go to 1440. We're still at 120 FPS at 1440 now.
Oh, Capital One? My team's transformer-based AI model.
Built using contextual data.
Helps personalize your experience in real time.
That's how we stack.
That's technology at Capital One.
Because every trip becomes a guilt trip. Give more love than humanly possible when you feed a Hill's scientifically proven formula. Because you're only human, there's Hill's.
Cyberpunk has the Steam Deck preset, which I'll start with, but I want to see just how good or bad it is. I want to say this: I've never, ever used Steam Big Picture before, or a controller with Steam, but getting in and out of things so far has been pretty intuitive. Okay, obviously the Steam Deck preset is a bit too conservative. Okay, now it's down to like 128, 130. Doesn't look super great, because I think it's FSRing right now. So I think we can tune this to be a lot better though, but 140 FPS is definitely good. I didn't mean to do that. Wrong button. Oh, I didn't mean to do that either. Hold on. I don't use controller very often. Now we're at 1080p high. Default settings, we're not changing anything. Just set the preset to high. And we're getting 121 FPS in 1080p with FSR 2.1, I believe it is. Yeah, FSR 2.1, which for some reason looks better than 3.0 in this title. We look at 3.0 and it gets worse, like fuzzier, which is kind of crazy. So I'm gonna go over to balance right now and see what happens. 142 FPS. Then again, I'm kind of leaving the city, so. Yeah, 130, 127. Ah! Now let's try ray tracing. Ray tracing low. So now we're into the, now we're under 100 finally, under 90, 85, 87. 100 over here. So yeah, I think this is like a ray tracing off type of title as far as I'm concerned.
Ago, we were all waiting with bated breath to see Jim's latest prank on The Office. But here in the 2020s, we're all just still watching The Office. Well, Dwight Schrute himself has a theory. Rainn Wilson went on Fox News recently and said,
I don't think there's been very many good comedies that have come out in the last 10 or 15 years. And I wish we could find a way to make good comedy again. And I do feel like you couldn't make The Office today. I think that would be too hard to be as politically incorrect as the show was.
Okay, first of all, it's kind of weird seeing Rainn Wilson complaining about cancel culture on Fox News. He's a self-proclaimed hope hippie whose logo is literally a space unicorn. Dude took a wrong turn on the way to the love commune and wound up in Rupert Murdoch's hate dungeon. And it's also a strange argument to make because one of the only comedies being made right now literally is a spin-off of The Office. But, Rainn is right about one thing. We are in an unprecedented TV comedy drought. Sitcoms only account for 1.7% of new TV shows this entire decade. And it's not because people don't want to watch sitcoms anymore. The Big Bang Theory, which ended in 2019, is still in the top 10 most streamed shows of May 2026. And sitcoms punch way above their weight for streamers. They make up 13% of Hulu's total subscriber retention, despite only being 7% of their catalog. And the same is true at the other streamers. So if all of us still want to watch sitcoms, why isn't Hollywood making any new ones? Well, it's not because of cancel culture. Much like a Jenga tournament on the San Andreas Fault, the problem isn't cultural at all, it is structural. See, Hollywood used to have a well-honed pipeline for creating new comedies. They built it over decades, from I Love Lucy to Parks and Rec. And once it was up and running, it was a comedy factory, if you will, that pumped out insane, funny new characters, ridiculous situations, and hit new series at a steady clip. But then, about 10 years ago, the streaming companies showed up, Hollywood shifted its business model, and in so doing, they systematically burned that factory to the ground. They did so by making 3 big changes to the way the TV industry works that literally make it impossible to create the comedies of the past today. In this video, I'm going to explain exactly how Hollywood killed the sitcom, why that is such a loss, and what it would take to get them back. So let's get one thing straight. There are some shows on the air today that a lot of us call comedies. But if you really look closely at them, they're actually written more like dramas. Think of The Bear, which won Emmys in the comedy category several times despite not being remotely funny. I mean, when someone tells me why I need to watch The Bear, they don't say it made them laugh, they describe how stressful it is. And frankly, I'm on medication specifically to avoid the feelings that The Bear causes in me. It's not a comedy if I need to call Dr. Schwartz at the end of every episode. Even Hacks, a show that I really love and one of the absolute funniest shows on air in the last couple years, is written like a drama. Every season of Hacks is a serialized, high-stakes story about Deborah and Ava trying to achieve a specific, seemingly impossible dream. And like a drama, it has a series and season arc, and it's full of scream-at-the-TV cliffhangers and surprise double crosses. Just like how Breaking Bad is a show about Walter White cooking meth for healthcare coverage, Hacks is about Deborah Vance trying to win Hollywood immortality in increasingly c***y fur coats. And yes, my female writer said I could use the C word. Only once, though, that's all I get. But by contrast, in a true sitcom, the comedy is what drives the action. Sitcom is literally short for situation comedy. And that means every episode puts the same characters in a different comedy situation. In Cheers, maybe the know-it-all mailman goes on Jeopardy. In New Girl, there's an amazing episode where Winston simply does a puzzle in increasing states of undress to the great annoyance of Schmidt. One of my favorite sitcoms, News Radio, has an entire episode where Phil Hartman's character starts using a cane, which annoys Dave Foley so much he steals it from him. That's it. The episode is literally called The Cane, and this is how it ends.
You do realize I'm just going to go and buy another cane, don't you?
Yeah, and I'm just gonna steal it again.
Touche. Beth, here's one you can take right now. This one you can break later. Here's one for the Hamptons. This one I like, I keep. This one displeases me.
The characters don't learn anything, they don't grow as people, there's no season arc, it's just goofy fun. And sure, it can be nice to watch the Bridgertons doink or those doctors from the pit do blood stuff, but sometimes, at the end of a long day, you don't want twists and turns, right? You just want to relax and laugh with your funny friends in a place where everybody knows your name. And by filling that basic human need, sitcoms like these made the Hollywood companies billions. So, why have they stopped making sitcoms and pivoted to drama-style comedies? Simple, because of short season orders. See, in the old days of broadcast TV, sitcoms aired once a week, practically year-round. There was a fall season, a spring season, hell, they might have even thrown you a Christmas special. But now that we've moved to streaming, all we get is 8 measly episodes per season. 10 if it stars a white guy your dad likes. And if you only get a couple episodes, well, you need a season-long dramatic storyline to keep the audience hooked because we never get enough time to truly know and enjoy the characters. Here's the thing, the most important ingredient in a great sitcom is time. Take Parks and Rec, for instance. You know, the first season of that show feels so much more uncomfortable than the fourth. And not just because you're dying for Ann to dump Andy in the pit. It's because you don't know the characters that well yet, and critically, neither did the writers. You don't know this Ron Swanson guy. Who is he? He seems like kind of a jerk. Hey, but by the end of season 4, he's your jerk. A first season is kind of like a first hang with a new friend group.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Zeal Zaddy. I'm Zeal. My pronouns are he, him, and this is Paper Bag, the role-playing game show. The players are playing for $50 gift card to the Monte Cook Game Store. plus a $30 gift card to the Only Crits Dice game store. And all participants receive a product from one of our sponsors, which include these amazing companies: Monte Cook Games, the legendary creators of Numenera, Invisible Sun, Cypher 2.0 coming out later in the year. The Kickstarter was amazing. And we roll Only Crits Dice here on Paper Bag, and that's because we only want to roll crits. Alligator Alley Entertainment, the creators of Esper Genesis, Tales and Tomes from the Forgotten Library, and many other products. Gonza Gaming, who released, I think it was middle of...
Hey there, I'm Mr. Terry, high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher Reacts video. It's an interesting question here in the United States. It is, why do rural areas seem to vote more conservative while urban areas tend to vote more liberal? And usually in that context, meaning rural areas voting for the Republican Party and urban areas more likely to vote for the Democratic Party. Because, let's be honest, it's still a two-party system, no matter what the sort of extremes you might have in those parties. Well, that's what it looks like Ken LaCourte is doing here, and I wanted to see what he says. So I'm going to link this video down below. Make sure that you are supporting that. Of course, let me know what you think down in the comments. Let's see what we got. Now, one thing I do like with the sort of titling of this is not necessarily why are cities Democrat and rural areas Republican, because the platform of parties change because there are new challenges and evolving challenges and political motivations that happen over time. We've seen the platforms of the two major parties in the United States change quite a bit, actually, over decades and even well over the last century or so.
Why are cities liberal and rural areas conservative? We often think of red states and blue states, especially as we watch the presidential election results every 4 years. Right. But those maps are a simplistic view of American politics. Looking at county-level maps gets us closer to reality.
Sure, that's not better than the states, of course, but you got to remember too, you vote where the voting is by people, right? It's not by land. So the places that you see, often the blue areas, those are where the people are.
Now, some Republicans love that map, but it really shows land, not people.
Right.
And land doesn't vote.
And I hope you guys understand. I hope you understand that. You see that pop up all the time after elections. They're like, look at this. Look what it shows. And you're like, okay, that's not reality. Like Ken said, that's land.
Here's a look that's even better, which shows the counties raised by population level. Okay. This is actually the best look at the American political divide. Liberal cities surrounded by conservative countryside.
Sure, we have very dense cities. We have huge cities.
Look, I live in liberal California, where we also have millions of rural conservative voters.
Yeah, I was about to say that. And even California, even go down a little bit further south than Los Angeles, go to a place like Orange County that is red quite often. And voting for Republican Party, voting conservative.
And they're overwhelmed by even more millions of left-leaning voters living in San Francisco and Los Angeles. And it's the same story in New York, Illinois, Oregon, really almost all American states. And it's a pattern we see in many parts of the world as well, with cities in the countryside voting like they're two different countries. What really surprised me when I started researching this video is that in America, this is a very new phenomenon. Like it happened in my lifetime. I'm Ken LaCourte. This may not be as edgy as my typical video, but if you really want to understand politics, it's a vital one.
I think this will be plenty edgy in the sense of how people respond to this. One thing I've noticed in the years of doing my channel is people are very defensive of these ideas about the geography and the history and what voting has been like.
As always, I try to look past the simplistic explanations and do my best to give you something as close to the actual story as I can manage, at least in 20 minutes. In this video, I'll first explain how it wasn't always like this.
Sure.
Then look at the underlying
Rural
values
areas
that
used to
laid the
vote
groundwork
for the Democratic
separation.
Party, if you want to look at
Then
that
a look
way.
at history, starting with how LBJ changed everything in the 1960s.
Sure.
Followed up by looking at the decade it split.
Yeah. What brings up Nixon too. Southern strategy, also very important for this.
And finally, what keeps them apart today. What you're about to hear isn't really the red versus blue fight. It's a look at identity and values and who gets left behind when economies change. To me, that's a more interesting story.
Sure. I like how he's going to bring change in this because that's the most important factor.
Shit. So as I was saying, what really happens is you go into the rural area and you talk to the people who live there, and their perception of reality is the exact opposite of what it is. And that's largely because their way of thinking has not evolved in 100 years. When you go to the rural areas, they will actually tell you, well, the Republicans are the party of the working man, and Democrats are the party of the rich man. Now, once upon a time, like, go back to the 1930s. That is true. 1940s, that is true. 1950s, that is true. Civil rights happens. That's no longer true. Flippity flop. Now, Democrats are the party of the working man and unions and helping the poor. Republicans are the party of the rich and the corporations. Period. But they rely on the mentality of the rural voters still being backwards and unevolved. And that's why all of their news outlets keep pouring that narrative into them.
Like I said at the very beginning of the video, politicians and party platforms have to change with new conditions. Look at the history of a voting map and you will see how it's changed a lot in the United States.
So if it wasn't
Hopefully
always
shows
like
more.
this, what was it like? Now, I worked in political campaigns before many of you were born, and then in the news business for decades, but I never fully understood until now how this massive shift has been going on for decades. This chart makes it clear. It shows post-World War II support for Democratic presidential candidates by region. Blue is urban, the green is rural. As you see, in the 40s and 50s, they're pretty equal and move in tandem. Then we see them both move up, more Democratic in the Kennedy and Johnson.
Civil rights.
Now, when you analyze maps and look at history, I always want to know, like, what was going on at those times? And I'm glad this map actually showed that. You see that at the bottom there, the yellow bar.
Pre-civil rights, during civil rights, post-civil rights.
This was a major thing.
It was.
That influenced the parties and how they're going to campaign and who people are going to vote for. It's not the only one of, you know, specific events or not controversies, but, you know, like dilemmas.
But even though it's kind of even on the vote share, it still very much was like historically, if you look at the news media of that time, historically the Republicans were considered the party of the working man, the Dems were considered the party of the elite and the rich. That's why they still try to push that propaganda today. And the actual voters look back at them, especially the Fox News heads, and are like, those talking heads are like, what do you mean I'm a Republican? I'm very much a Democrat, sir.
But it's the major one that you can really start to see the beginning of that divide. You see the other one, interestingly, with like he has kind of an early 90s here. So this is Clinton administration.
Then, all the Democratic numbers drop as Richard Nixon is elected twice, but a lot more among that green rural America. The partisan gap.
At the moment, the park police are making arrests around the reflecting pool. The president has claimed that vandals, quoting him here, took some form of knife or blade and put a 250-foot-long gash into the beautiful facade of what took so much work, competence, and money to build and complete. He increased the estimate to 300 feet later, then to 350 feet, insisting that it was, quoting him again, cut and powerfully lifted off the surface, leaving very jagged, uneven edges. He was asked what proof there was of any of that, since it doesn't seem to be visible to any other person. And he said, well, you'll have to go see the Parks Department. They'll show it to you, or see the secretary, but I saw it. We have pictures. He also said, you'll see it in court. So you were a police commissioner in Texas, understand it? When people visiting the reflecting pool are being arrested, handcuffed, and dragged away by your police officers, you'd like to think that they have proper probable cause to arrest someone. I grew up in the Foreign Service, and there were plenty of countries in which arrests made to satisfy a political leader's narrative that had no basis in fact was something that they did. The American system of justice has not operated that way. What can you tell me here today about what damage was done to the reflecting pool, where this 350-foot gash came from, and why tourists are being arrested? What is the factual predicate for these arrests?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And indeed, I have spent, as a son of a police officer, as well as a police commissioner, I've spent virtually my entire life in and around the law enforcement industry, or business community, rather.
So you'd agree with me that arresting tourists to vindicate a political narrative, not because of any evidence of a crime, would be a wrong thing to do if that were what happened, correct?
Senator, the U.S. Park Police is one of the most extraordinary and historic police departments in the United States, founded in 17.
What does that have to do with the question? What does that have to do with the question? Is there a probable cause? Well, let me tell you, last Friday when I was making pancakes, I said to myself, do I want the maple syrup or the butter syrup? And you know what I went with? I went with the maple syrup. Why do we put people in charge of things who can't even pass the basic, who can't even rise to the standard we expect of our children? Like, seriously. Just think about how different our political landscape would look if we hold our elected officials to the same standards that we do our children. This guy would not be in power Think about this. Think about you ask your child, okay, I specifically told you not to leave your bicycle in the driveway last night, and you did anyway. It is out in the driveway. Why is that? Well, let me tell you, mother and father, back when the bicycle was first invented, but Republicans intentionally vote for people who act like feral fucking toddlers. These are people who were raised by trash parents. Or if they were raised by good parents, you know those parents stopped talking to them years ago. Acting like pieces of shit like this. Like this guy. What the fuck? You can't answer a simple fucking question. But you know what? Nobody deserves to have to endure your bullshit. So we're just going to skip past, because what he asked you was, is there any probable cause for these people being arrested? He didn't ask you to deflect off to, well, the history of the Buck police.
1989.
Incident seems so aggravating, and I'd like to ask you to respond to
And
that. And I'd like to ask you, these incidents seem so
that live here.
Yeah, which is why these incidents seem so aggravating, and I'd like to ask you to respond
And
to that.
consequently, sir, I would say that, and I think that all people would agree, that ensuring that law and order is.
So, in other words, you're not going to answer the question. Or you can't. You're not smart enough to answer the question. You're not mature enough to answer the question. You're not honest enough to answer the question. That's how I would act if I was a congressman running one of these committees. That's exactly how I'd be talking to him. So, what's the issue here? I'm asking you a very basic question that even a 7-year-old child could answer, but you are apparently either incapable or unwilling. Why is that? If you won't answer that question, then at least tell me why you can't at least rise to the standard of behavior that we expect from children. Hmm.
Walsh's video on the history of slavery in America, and took a look at I didn't watch the video, but I looked at the video on his channel, and it's like nearly an hour long. And I feel like that's just a lot to throw, not only at me, but for me to throw at all of you in one go. I did see that he's got clips, like various segments of it available. So I think that's what we're going to do, is from time to time take a look at some of these segments. I'm especially interested in seeing, he's got a video that I guess is behind a paywall on a subscription service about what he says is the real history of the Civil War. And from watching the trailer of that, it seems to be very heavily pro-Confederacy. So I'm actually really anxious for that to get released in some form to the public so we can take a look at that one. But in the meantime, I want to take a look at this specific 10-minute clip that he has, which is titled "The History of White Slaves in America." I know some of my friends like Mr. Beat and Cynical Historian have taken a look at this, as have some others, and I haven't watched any of their videos, so I'm coming into this cold. I have no idea what Matt Walsh is going to say. I'm somewhat familiar with Matt Walsh and his politics, so I have a feeling I know where this is going, but as always, I just invite you to offer your thoughts, but I would ask you to do a couple of things, and I think this is just good advice in general for videos. First of all, watch the whole video before you comment. So often I get people who comment things based on the title or based on the first 2-3 minutes of a video that would have been addressed had they watched the entire thing, or that don't accurately reflect what the video ends up being about. So I think it's a great practice for us to get into in general, which is to listen and then offer comment. And I try to do that as much as I can, but sometimes I jump on things a little too quickly myself, so we're all guilty of that. But let's go ahead and dive into this one. The link's down in the description so you can check it out without my commentary. Here we go.
In today's fast-paced business world,
think
effective
that's it.
communication is key to success. But with
Google trash.
On the morning of June 14th, 1786, Captain James Moore's family woke up on what seemed to be a normal day in Southwest Virginia. But as they left the family's cabin to tend to their farm animals, the fearful war whoop was heard. And a raiding party of Ohio Valley Shawnee Indians rode down a ridgeline and attacked them. Captain Moore was shot 7 times before being tomahawked and scalped. The Indians then murdered 3 of his children, leaving only his family members who were locked inside the cabin. Much like the Barbary pirates, the Indians broke into the house, shot the dogs, plundered and burned.
I've seen a few videos where it pointed out that the whole scalping thing is like primarily bullshit. Like, yeah, it was a thing that happened like sometimes, but like it's something that racists use in every single story because it just makes, all Native Americans seem bad.
Burned the home, killed the livestock, and took Moore's wife and surviving children captive.
Yeah, and this is a story that gets repeated multiple times along the frontier. Kind of basically along the Appalachian Mountains is really where the frontier is for a lot of early American history. This story is repeated many times over in the West, and it does happen both ways. You have a lot of raiding parties here in Ohio, in Northeast Ohio. We have the Gnadenhutten massacre, where peaceful Moravian Indians who hadn't attacked anybody, who weren't enslaving anybody, got attacked by a group of patriot militia and murdered men, women, and children. So this absolutely is a true part of history.
The raiding party stole horses and embarked on a journey to Detroit, which was then an open-air market for humans captured by Indians. To give you a sense of the savagery of the Indians, when one of the surviving sons, John, fell behind on the journey, an Indian split his head open with a tomahawk and then told John's mother what happened with her son's bloody scalp hanging in his waistband. They reached Detroit in December, where in a...
And so if that's the slavery with the Indians by your standard, then white people are still a million times worse. But of course, Matt Walsh has like the IQ of a grapefruit, so he doesn't know that.
Drunken frolic. One of the surviving daughters, Mary Moore, was sold into slavery for a few gallons of rum to a man named Stogwell, who had been an active Tory during the war and had removed to Canada after it closed for fear of losing his life if he remained in the United States.
Yeah, but at that point, Canada had or was about to abolish slavery. It was actually John Graves Simcoe who did that, the guy who's the villain in Turn Washington Spies. He's the one who outlawed slavery in what was then called Upper Canada, which would be this, on the map, the lower part.
3 years later, she was rescued by her brother and returned to the United States. Stories like Mary Moore's were common in the early frontier period in America, and often the stories became nationwide bestsellers.
Yeah, but at the same time, while that was happening, it was also happening to the Native Americans and also a million times worse. And it was also happening to just about, like anybody else who stepped foot in this. It was happening to the Asians. It was happening to fucking everybody, and it was being perpetrated by white people as even more so. So what do you fucking do? I don't know. I don't understand what you're crying about, Maddie.
The vast majority of white slaves in the United States were owned by fellow whites. Somewhere between 60 and 70% of white immigrants.
There you go. Owned by fellow whites. See? You are genetic garbage, Maddie.
Supergirl's fallout is bigger than you think, and we gotta talk about what it really exposes. Why the Supreme Court just humiliated Trump on birthright citizenship, but gave him a huge advantage in the midterms by lifting spending limits. We go inside the crazy North Carolina inmate revolts, and if you've bought a PC, an iPad, or even a smartphone recently, you might actually be the victim of a massive corporate conspiracy. We're talking about all of that and even more on today's brand new Philip DeFranco show. You daily dive into the news, starting with this. Trump just got hit with a devastating decision from the Supreme Court. In one of its most anticipated rulings this term, the Supreme Court voted to uphold the right to birthright citizenship. And so you had them striking down the executive order signed on the first day of Trump's second term, which declared that babies born in the US cannot be granted citizenship if their parents were in the country illegally or temporarily. Now, it's also important that we get into the details for a number of reasons, starting with the fact that if you were looking at the headlines or even going into the body of these news pieces, you might have seen some conflicting information about whether the justices ruled 5-4 or 6-3. And the truth there is that it was genuinely confusing, so we should break it down. Right, so on one side, you had Justices John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett joining the court's liberals and the majority, ruling that Trump's order violated both federal law and the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which explicitly states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. But then on the other side, you had Justices Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, and Samuel Alito dissenting. Right, and so it's Brett Kavanaugh where things start to get a little confusing, right? Because you had him agreeing with the majority that Trump's order violated federal law, specifically the Nationality Act of 1940, which codified birthright citizenship into federal statute. But Kavanaugh also partially dissented, rejecting the court's finding that Trump's order violated the 14th Amendment, which is then why you had some outlets saying the court ruled 6-3 that the order violated federal law and 5-4 that it violated the Constitution. But that discrepancy aside, I cannot understate how massive of a decision this is. Right, this would have changed how we define citizenship in the US in the most fundamental way, since the 14th Amendment guaranteed citizenship to formerly enslaved people shortly after the Civil War. Though also, right, the interpretation that birthright citizenship applies to the children of illegal immigrants, that actually has roots about 130 years old, when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of a man by the name of Wong Kim Ark. Because you had this guy who was born in San Francisco to Chinese parents, and you had the court ruling that he was considered a US citizen, establishing the long-held principle that the 14th Amendment automatically grants citizenship to any baby born in America. Though there are a few limited exceptions, like the children of foreign diplomats. And you've had that since then, just being the precedent kind of set in stone. But then you had a lawyer for the Trump administration, Solicitor General D. John Sauer, arguing in court that birthright citizenship had created a birth tourism industry, and claiming that, quote, uncounted thousands of foreigners from potentially hostile nations have flocked to give birth in the United States in recent decades. And you had Sauer also claiming that the phrasing of the 14th Amendment invokes a certain political allegiance that is required to be a U.S. citizen, and arguing that the Constitution did not grant citizenship to the children of temporary visitors or illegal aliens who have no such allegiance. But then on the other side, you had an attorney for the ACLU, which sued to block Trump's order, hitting back, saying that the phrasing Sauer was referring to has long been interpreted to refer to the children of foreign diplomats diplomats and others, not children born on U.S. soil, to those here illegally or temporarily, arguing the framers of the 14th Amendment meant to have universal law of citizenship subject to narrow exceptions. Also beyond that, you had dozens of professors filing a briefing supporting the legal challenge and arguing that Trump's order, it would just be completely disastrous. Right, according to those experts, around 250,000 kids would have been born without citizenship in the U.S. each year under Trump's order. So you're talking about roughly 5 million by 2045. And many of them, they said they'd probably be left just without a nationality entirely, right? Because their parents would either be unwilling or unable to obtain citizenship for their US-born kids in their homelands. And that's on top of what you had professors arguing would be enormous economic consequences. And in fact, that was echoed in another brief by over 140 scholars where it said that immigrants and their citizen children, they're essential to balancing the aging US
And are you going to
workforce,
do that
increasing the national
retroactively?
GDP, and overall providing net positive fiscal contributions. You had them arguing that Trump's order
You'll lose a lot of
likely caused
Republican
mass
voters too.
deportations that could result in labor shortages and increased inflation. And that as far as more from the Supreme Court justices themselves, you had Roberts, who of course is a conservative, writing the majority opinion and arguing citizenship then and now was the right to have rights to freely participate in our political community. The framers of the 14th Amendment extended that promise to every freeborn person in this land and saying we keep that promise today. But then with the dissenting justices, you had them kind of echoing the Trump administration's talking points. Or with Alito writing, this is one of the most important decisions in the history of the court, and in my judgment, the court has made a serious mistake, and adding that the ruling will seriously affect the country's future. And then as far as Trump's response,
'Cause he's
this is one of the
racist.
times where I don't get to say that Trump had a meltdown. He, at least publicly facing, is not as pissed off as you might expect, at least as of I'm recording this. Right? That is definitely subject to change, because this order, it was very obviously a massive deal to him. Trump cared about this case so much, he literally went
He
to
exploded.
attend oral arguments at the Supreme Court. And you might remember that. It marked the first time ever in U.S. history that a sitting president's done that. And that's seen largely because of the whole separation of powers thing. You usually don't want the president there because it might seem like he's trying to intimidate the Supreme Court into voting a certain way. But you know, this is Trump, different times. So it also, one, might be because he's getting used to losing, or two, because he is getting some other wins that we'll get to. But I mean, just another example of his reaction when he took a L. The Supreme Court, right? Remember when they struck down his tariffs? It was another one of his most important policies, and he went ballistic. He called them unpatriotic, disloyal to our Constitution, a disgrace to our nation, and that's among other things. Well, today, as of recording, he did send off a number of posts. They were unusually subdued for him. You had him or whoever writing things like, the Supreme Court upheld birthright citizenship, which is too bad for our country, but we can easily make it up in Congress through legislation, and arguing that a new constitutional amendment isn't necessary and calling on Congress to start today. So then a huge thing I have to hit on is, well, numerous legal experts have said that a change to birthright citizenship would in fact require a constitutional amendment, which probably makes sense to you because it was literally established in an amendment. You then also, as far as Trump's reaction, had him seemingly implying that this was all kind of some Chinese psyop, or that there's going to be a Chinese takeover or something now. Writing, I would like to congratulate President Xi and the great country of China on their massive birthright citizenship win. Though also, maybe Trump was a little more subdued because he knew that others would take it to a 10. And if that's the case, well, he definitely wasn't wrong.
I mean, I predicted the court would rule against Trump because the globalists want the borders open. They want replacement migration. It's really white genocide.
You also had poison-resistant rat Stephen Miller calling it one of the most destructive and outrageous decisions in the long history of the Supreme Court, and adding that American citizenship belongs only and solely to Americans. Which I will say just is a pretty crazy take from someone whose family literally immigrated to the United States to flee Jewish persecution in Russia in the early 1900s. Like, my man, I know you love revisionist history, but when you say, like, they are flooding our borders, you is they. Although, counterpoint, if we had closed borders, we wouldn't have Stephen Miller here. Oof.
Does your home gym look like this? Bulky, crowded. Yeah, not built for...
Is Stephen Miller being in power actually one of the best arguments for closed borders? Right, against any immigration or asylum? I'll have to think about it some more. But back on topic, you also had some slamming the conservative justices who sided with the majority, saying that they're traitors who betrayed the country. And while they all took hits, again, they really homed in on Amy Coney Barrett. I mean, hell, you even had Representative Nancy Mace literally calling for Barrett to be removed from the bench. Though also, they didn't have a problem with her or the other conservatives with some of the other rulings today. Because you also had the Supreme Court ruling 6-3 along ideological lines to uphold laws banning trans athletes from playing on girls and women's sports teams. And there, you had the case focusing on a high school athlete in West Virginia and a college athlete in Idaho who challenged laws in their respective states requiring that students play on teams based on biological sex, right? AKA their sex at birth. And even though the ruling was just on those two state laws, the implications here they're nationwide, and around 25 other states have their own laws restricting or barring trans athletes. And Title IX, it was at the center of a lot of the arguments here, and in the end, you had Justice Kavanaugh writing in the majority opinion, consistent with Title IX and the Equal Protection Clause, we hold that the states may maintain women's and girls' sports for biological females, and saying the Constitution and Title IX do not require an overhaul of women's and girls' sports throughout America. Though we then also said that he expressed some sympathy for trans athletes, noting that most of the people impacted by this debate are either teenagers or in their early 20s, and, quote, those student athletes want to play sports. Their desire to compete warrants respect, and saying no student athlete on either side of the issue, whether a biological female or transgender, deserves to be ostracized or vilified. So then with this, as far as reactions, you had people who support bans on trans athletes celebrating this as a major win. Or you had the president of the Alliance Defending Freedom saying blue states with boys on girls' podiums, you're next. Though then also, in response, you had LGBT rights activists emphasizing that right now, this ruling doesn't actually impact the protections that exist in states like California, though they still are condemning the decision overall, with the President for Human Rights campaign calling the ruling heartbreaking and adding, when politicians convince the public that any girl could be the wrong kind of girl, they invite harassment, intimidation, invasive questioning, or even an inspection of their body by a total stranger. And on that last note, you had the New York Times adding that there are some pretty tricky questions that are being posed by this rule. Things like how sports officials will determine if competitors are girls and women as defined by the opinion. Noting while gender verification testing, a long vilified and intrusive practice, has resumed at the Olympic level, how will grade schools, middle schools, and high schools conduct those tests? And asking, will everyone be tested or just the athletes who draw suspicion? Right, or to put it another way, there's a question of if you don't want someone playing on a team, or you want to even maybe just harass them, will someone just make a false allegation about some random child and then they're either barred from the sport or they have to have some sort of medical exam with a stranger? But ultimately, we're gonna have to see what happens there. The debate is, of course, far from over. But then that also, it brings us to the last ruling that was handed down by the Supreme Court today, which is very much being seen as a huge win for Republicans, especially heading into the midterms. Where because the Supreme Court, they just lifted rules restricting how much national political parties can spend on advertising in coordination with candidates. And in another 6-3 ruling, they decided that these limitations violated free speech. And at least right now, Republicans are the ones who stand to benefit the most from it. Or with the Washington Post, for example, reporting that top Republican committees ended last month with over $250 million in the bank and no debt. And then you compare that to top Democratic committees who have just $127 million plus $18 million in debt. And this decision now allows these committees to use as much of these funds as they want in coordination with candidates and their campaigns, right? Meaning that they can get the low TV advertising rates that campaigns are entitled to, while outside groups still have to pay more for advertising. And actually, J.D. Vance was among the first candidates to challenge those rules back in 2022 when he was joined by major Republican committees. So that, as you had Democrats pushing back against it, thinking that it just opens the door for political parties to pay way too many expenses. And in her dissent, you had Justice Kagan really hitting on this, saying that this ruling enables a party to serve as an alternative checking account for a campaign. And adding, as a result, a donor will be able to give a party as much as $500,000 as compared to the $7,000 he can give directly to the candidate to cover the candidate's bills. But then on the other side, you had Kavanaugh saying that this allows both parties, Democrat and Republican, to participate more freely and compete more fully in the political process and to coordinate more closely with their candidates. And so yeah, overall, just a very big day out of the Supreme Court again. And while they've now officially closed out their term, it feels like a lot of things have been set in the setup for the midterms. Or we're going to be seeing post-decision maneuvering, butterfly effects. There's a lot to watch. Though also, in the meantime, I'd really love to know your thoughts, opinions, and reactions to the decisions today. And then there's more we got to dive into in just a minute, but first, let me thank a sponsor. Because recently, you've probably seen, because you watched this show, that the Supreme Court handed down a major ruling on President Trump's authority to remove officials from independent agencies. But depending on the headline you saw, you might have thought that the court either blocked Trump, expanded his power, or did both. And to understand not just what happened, but how different outlets are telling that same story, I use today's sponsor, Ground News. And sometimes it's about just seeing what the outlets are focusing on. Right? Some focused on the court protecting the Federal Reserve, while others highlighted the broader expansion of presidential authority over the other agencies. So sometimes it's the same ruling, but a very different emphasis. And that's exactly what Ground News lets you see. It compares how hundreds of news outlets across the political spectrum are covering the exact same story side by side. It also shows factuality ratings and who owns each publication, giving you more context behind the coverage. Though always, my favorite feature is the blind spot feed, which highlights stories that one side is covering heavily while the other side's barely talking about it. It ends up honestly being one of the fastest ways to find news gaps in your news diet. And hey, if you want help understanding the news instead of just reacting to the headlines, Ground News is absolutely worth checking out. So head to ground.news/DeFranco or scan that QR code to get 40% off unlimited access to the Vantage plan, which is the one I use. Tried to paint the situation as one thing or another. It does, at the very least, seem like both conservative culture warriors and even normie moving into the news. Let's talk about this whole Supergirl situation. Because while a lot of people have tried to paint the situation as one thing or another, it does, at the very least, seem like both conservative culture warriors and even normie movie critics not the biggest fan, right? They seem generally united in their hatred for what's going to probably be one of the biggest flops of the summer.
A cringy, cliched, tedious mess of dull, lifeless action scenes that we've seen a million times before.
It's just
and then, till we get to the ending.
I really liked the quotable lines from the villain, such as, and when he looks surprised and looks like he's doing a bad Robert De Niro impersonation.
Jeremy Johns, the last guy, his thumbnails always let me know exactly what he thinks of the movies, but I still watch. But yeah, the movie's generally been seen as kind of a failure regarding the reviews and the box office, right? With it getting a 54% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes, as well as a semi-decent 76% audience score, though that audience score may also be impacted by the lack of people that are watching it. Because you see, opening weekend, the movie netted just $37 million domestically and $68 million globally, which, you know, would be great if it was a movie that had like the budget of Obsession. But Warner Brothers, they sank $170 million into just the production alone. That's not even counting the millions and millions of dollars for marketing and advertising. And according to Deadline, industry sources are estimating a $125 million loss. And so then with that, you've got people looking for someone to blame. And so you have a lot of fingers being pointed towards James Gunn and Peter Safran, the guys hired a few years ago to make DC the new Marvel. They're trying to build or rebuild a whole cinematic universe, and their first swing was, of course, last year's Superman reboot. And that, of course, was generally seen as a huge win. It got good reviews, $619 million. In fact, the sequel to it, it's scheduled to release next summer, with Supergirl meant to be the in-between film. And while you had many with Supergirl saying they didn't like it because of this thing or that, you know, maybe on a technical level, the writing, the acting, the camera work. Others, they didn't like it for what they said was a different reason.
The American people, for the love of all that is holy, do not want woke.
Now, of course, almost any superhero film that has a female lead, it's inevitably going to get hit by a bunch of guys going,
I heard that Tim Pool got married. It is a fact that he is not the man in that relationship.
whoa. But also in this case, it looked like they were taking issue with the particular decision to cast Millie Alcock as Supergirl. And that appeared to be for a number of reasons, including that they disapproved of the way that she looked.
At least Wonder Woman kind of looked like she was in shape. This girl doesn't look super at all. These are the memes in my timeline.
Okay, I just bought these headphones that are not designed for gaming. They were actually designed for producers and audiophiles, but they're the best gaming headphones I've ever had. Let's talk about it. I questioned everybody that I know that plays games, from casual players to hardcore players. What gaming headset should I use? And I was referred to many different brands: HyperX, SteelSeries, Logitech, Razer, Corsair. The options were endless, right? And I tried most of them. I tried the A50s, I tried the Clouds, I tried the Nova Pros. I can't tell you how many pairs of headphones I tried, seriously. They all had something I didn't like. The build quality felt cheap in a lot of them, like they were made of nothing but plastic. They're flopping around everywhere. I didn't like that. And if I did find a pair that didn't feel like they were going to fall apart, they just didn't sound that good. The sound pretty much sucked in them. It didn't matter if
But then also, going past her looks, you had
If Millie would have been all buff, they would have complained about that. Oh, she looked like a man. Because we watched them actually fucking do it.
a lot of people getting real mad about some things she said while she was promoting the film. Right, in the first step here, you had Millie telling Vanity Fair that her experience on House of the Dragon made her aware that, quote, simply existing as a woman in that space is something that people comment on, and adding, we've become very comfortable having this weird ownership of women's bodies, where they're saying, I can't really stop them, I can only be myself. And so you ended up seeing like a number of conservatives kind of just pissed off at the feminist sentiment there, or with inevitably some hurling abuse at her.
They
on
cry
social media,
and
which led to
whine.
her telling Variety, I didn't even say men, I said people, and they got so angry. I was like, you're proving my point. And then adding, I guess women know that this is just how it's always been, unfortunately. And it's from a lot of people whose profiles have no photo, who are burner accounts, or someone's name and then dad of 4, Christian, which is hilarious to me. And adding, but I mean, whose opinion do you really care about? If you're pissing the right kind of people off, you're doing okay. And you seem to see that comment kind of take what was a generally small but meaningful fire and stoked it into an inferno.
Like, I'm sorry, so like the right kinds of people to you are Christian dads, the most likely millennial dads, the men who grew up on
So this useless talking lampshade who is currently on the screen, like all the other furniture that they put in front of the microphones at Daily Wire and wherever. Yeah. In order for you to make your fucking point and play the victim, which is exactly what you're doing, which is all you ever do. I mean, you should have victim tattooed on your fucking forehead. Your only skill is being a fucking victim. Completely ignoring what she is saying those accounts are saying. She's saying if that's the account who throws a little titty baby bitch fit tantrum like you are now, you fucking victim. If they throw a fit because you say, hey, you know, maybe we shouldn't act like we own people's bodies, well, then that's the right kind of person to piss off. And it just so happens that the accounts that get pissed off, no picture, but data for Christian, you know? And it's like, yeah, you do realize that that's most likely a 12-year-old working from one of those fucking phone centers, or possibly even a 12-year-old in fucking Utah pretending. I mean, look at the lingo. It'll say like a 60-year-old, you know, Christian grandfather, but then you'll notice that all of their online chatter is like literally what you would expect like a teenager to say. And yeah, that's the right crowd to be pissing off. But see, you've got the IQ of a houseplant, you professional victim, you. And all you're focused on is how can I turn this into me having an opportunity to play the victim? And you also look like Tom Holland.
On Marvel and DC, who are most likely your franchise's most loyal fan base and target audience.
You are most likely Tom Holland.
Those are the people that are.
And no, that person is actually not the target audience for Supergirl or Game of Thrones, you fucking idiot. That crowd tends to think that fucking comic books are bad, and so's the nudity and stuff on Game of Thrones and the dragons and stuff. It's all evil and demonic. But once again, you don't even have enough IQ points to decorate a domino, you Tom Holland clone. You're just focused on how can I play the victim.
Are the right fans to piss off. It's just dumb. It's truly.
Yeah, let's piss off the people who were never gonna go in the first place.
Just dumb.
Or with Alcock's original quote getting twisted into this game of telephone until it became, you know, she hates white Christian fathers, which is clearly not what she meant, especially the white part. She never even mentioned race. And really quick, just to throw out my opinion here and also share my personal experience, I don't have a problem with religious people. I'm friends with many. Some of the best people I know are religious folk. But if you are a creator, whether it be the smallest person online to the biggest star in the world, you are very familiar with the type of internet account that she is talking about. Some of the most disgusting things, the slurs, the threats that have ever been thrown my way have come from a number of.
But all Tom Holland's twin over there is focused on is how can I turn this into an opportunity for me to play the victim? So all of that escapes her.
Accounts that love to include Bible quotes, right? And that can be factually true while also not then turning that into all religious people are bad, or then somehow into white Christian fathers.
And they're
are
most
bad.
likely
Then
not
also, the
even
outrage
human
machine
beings,
finding this other
like
thing
real
to chew on
people.
because a reporter asked her on the red carpet whether Supergirl is queer.
I don't know. I think that what makes this film so beautiful is that it's not centered around a man. It's not centered around love at all, if anything. But we'll see. I don't really know, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. She'd probably go both ways.
With that clip, I imagine making Jesse Waters over at Fox News do a fist pump in the air in the pre-production meeting.
Guys don't get into that. Maybe that's cool when you're 18, but when a girl's bisexual, we don't trust her. Yeah. We don't trust her, and the ones I've met are super weird. So to say you're bisexual.
Okay. For one thing, Jesse Waters is not a good example of a man. And for another, why is his nose like 12 feet above his mouth? Like, and it's funny because he still has a big nose. He still has a big nose. But like his, I mean, look, like if my face was his, like the top of my top lip would be like down here, and like my nose would be like up here. I mean, he's got like an 8-inch gap between his nose and his mouth, but yet he still has a big nose. I swear, it's like a Muppet came to life. It's like one of Jim Henson's Muppets came to life.
It's not a turn on. It's not a turn on.
Do you think they're just trying to turn you off?
I haven't considered that.
And then you had the movie actually hitting theaters, and when the reviews started rolling in, you had a lot on the right feeling completely vindicated.
Listen to her.
We're here because Gaza still needs your support.
Headlines fade, and the need does not.
We're over the forced upon us girl boss era. It's not authentic. It's not organic. We're no longer buying it. Like, it's not that women can't be empowered and fierce and all the great things. It's just how forced.
It's like these people on the right who have become the spokespeople for the right-wing movement. Like, they're such vile creatures. They don't even qualify as you know, like Megyn Kelly is not the type of vile creature you want speaking for women. You know, neither is that Brett Cooper, Tom Holland clone. Just like Jesse Waters is not a creature who has any place speaking for men or what men want.
Forcing it on us in the form of like Supergirl. If she's 5'1", it's a miracle. She's very weirdly small. And
so is Supergirl. See, this is the part where they reveal the fact that they don't know who they're talking about. That they have like zero knowledge of the source footage. Supergirl was a teenage girl. You fucking dildo.
and they want us to believe she's this fierce super. No.
Right, you generally had kind of all these commentators and pundits throwing Supergirl into the same wastebasket as the live action Snow White and the all-female Ghostbusters. But you also had others pushing back, pointing out that female-led superhero films have seen tremendous success before, pointing to Wonder Woman in 2017 and Captain Marvel in 2019. Plus, you've also had a long list of superhero films with male leads that have disappointed over the past several years. Think Black Adam, Morbius, and The Flash. So some argue that Supergirl's failure has less to do with it being woke and more to do with it just kind of being a bad movie. Though you did also have outlets like the New York Times saying it literally might be because she's a woman. Or with the New York Times reporting, quote, box office analysts on Sunday noted an uncomfortable truth. Female-led superhero movies have been rejected almost uniformly over the past 5 years or so, perhaps reflecting a resurgent misogyny among the core fan base, which is largely male. And the report saying that Warner Brothers executives believed the culture had evolved past that, and they were surprised by both the ferocity of the backlash and its reach. But whatever the case, at least publicly, you have DC Studios saying, we're moving forward with their chief executive
I haven't
saying,
seen it yet, but it follows the
meet our
woman
box office expectations. It's just one component of
awesome.
a broader long-term strategy at DC Studios that we remain confident in. And so for now, We'll see how things move forward, though. Just to quickly add my opinion, I watched the movie over the weekend with my two boys, and it was okay. I can 100% see why it bombed. I don't think this lands on Millie Alcock or any one specific thing. But then also, like, I'm just gonna move forward with my day, and I'm still interested to see what happens in the DC universe or whatever the hell is coming out. And it's not gonna become my whole personality to hate on this film and or try to turn myself into some victim of woke Hollywood. But with that said, this is actually kind of one of the fantastic things about having a show like this. I'd love to know your thoughts. If you watched the movie, what were your thoughts? But also, if you didn't watch the movie, why? Because for me personally, that's probably going to be the most interesting part of this story, is hearing from you on it. But then also, to jump from that to some really, really serious news, we should talk about this North Carolina hostage situation. Because you had it going down at the Bertie Martin Regional Detention Center in Windsor, which is a roughly 90-bed facility that holds pretrial detainees and short-term inmates from both Bertie and Martin counties. And very early yesterday morning, you had 88 inmates taking control of the facility from the 3 guards on staff at the time. With local law enforcement immediately responding, and the whole thing lasting nearly 9 hours. Right? As far as the full timeline here, at around 5 o'clock in the morning yesterday, you had the inmates at Bertie Martin starting their revolt. They pin down the guards, they take them as hostages, but one of them also escapes. And then within a matter of minutes, you've got 20 cops flooding the scene, along with agents from the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation and the FBI. And all of that just kicking off one of the longest mornings this small town's ever seen. Because you had negotiators, desperately trying to figure out any way to talk these inmates down and keep them from hurting either the guards or even each other. And actually, 4.5 hours later, they get somewhere. They managed to convince the inmates to let both of the hostages go. And while we're not sure exactly what the deal was, along with them, 18 of the inmates also walked out, right? And then you had 20 minutes later, another 62 walking out, leaving only 8 inmates on the inside, right? And those guys, they stayed holed up until nearly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, when those last few were detained and the North Carolina SBI announced that the facility was clear. As far as the guards, we don't know exactly what shape they're in, but we do know they've been treated for injuries. And as far as the inmates, they've been moved, and that's everyone from low-level offenders all the way up to those charged with murder. Right? And as far as the facility, that's essentially shut down right now while the investigation works to try to figure out exactly what sparked this inmate takeover. You also had the local sheriff being very clear that this jail is not under his umbrella, noting that it's run by an independent agency chosen by the jail commission rather than either of the 2 counties that it serves. Right? And with that, noting that questions of the staffing and the circumstances that led up to the whole thing yesterday, they're gonna have to be uncovered in the investigation. But he did promise to release any information to the public as soon as possible. Also, the thing that you've seen is that this whole situation left the community shaken up, especially the family members of inmates inside the facility at the time.
My son's safety was initially my first thought, just to make sure that he was okay. He did give me a call and let me know that he was okay and what was going on inside. He said it was just a mess. And so I just was concerned about his safety and his well-being.
And the concerns there, it was made even worse by scammers who were trying to take advantage of the inmates' friends and family. You had the Martin County Sheriff's Office warning people that they've been receiving reports of messages promising to release their loved ones if they sent an electronic payment. And you had them explaining on Facebook, this is a scam. At this time, neither the Martin County Sheriff's Office nor the Bertie County Sheriff's Office is placing inmates on electronic monitoring for release. And they've asked anyone that got one of those calls or texts to report it to the police. So as that's played out, you've also had others saying, hey, what happened here? It is a direct result of the jail mistreating the inmate.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform. Describe what you want, and watch it take shape.
A lot of stuff been going on down at that jail. They not feeding them, not letting them take baths, not doing that thing. Y'all feel like a riot just broke out no. Them folks down there going through stuff, and they humans just like everybody else. They got feelings.
So there, you had Bertie County Sheriff Tyrone Ruffin pushing back, calling those rumors misinformation and saying that he'd address those concerns when the situation is under control. But really for now, we're gonna have to kind of wait along with the community to get some real answers about what happened here. And then there's more we gotta dive into in just a minute. But first, let me thank a sponsor and say, if you've looked into healthier dog food before, you probably had the same reaction I did. Thinking, this looks great, but I'm not thawing frozen food every single morning. And that's exactly why today's sponsor, Sundays for Dogs, first caught my attention. This is real dog food made with human-grade ingredients, real meat, organs, and superfoods. My dogs love this stuff. It was created by a vet who wanted dog food that was healthier than traditional kibble without making feeding your dog feel like a second job. And because it's air-dried, you get the convenience of kibble with the nutrition of fresh food. No freezer, no fridge, no thawing, just scoop and serve. And honestly, my favorite part is how excited the dogs get when the second bag comes out. They're acting like I've suddenly become a 5-star chef. And because it's made with high-quality ingredients, it can support healthier digestion, shinier coats, fresher breath, and better overall health. So if you've been meaning to upgrade your dog's food, this is one of the easiest ways to do it. Just scan that QR code or go to Sundays Sundaysfordogs.com/Phil for 50% off your first order. That's Sundaysfordogs.com/Phil for 50% off your first order. Your dog will thank you. And then diving right back into the news. In fact, your final block of the show today, it's more news you need to know. And first up, we have a story of maybe cosmic justice, you could say. Right? Because in Alabama, you had a man who recently died from a heart attack while trying to hide the body of his girlfriend. With the man being Daniel Robbins and his girlfriend being Jessica Folds. And you had officials saying, based on the investigation, the female victim was strangled and it appears the male was attempting to dispose of the body in a remote location. And you had them apparently finding both of them on June 10th in a wooded area in the town of Lynette. And there, they said they also found a truck that was still running nearby, the tailgate was down, and there were drag marks in the dirt going towards the woods where they were found. Right? And then when officials sent the bodies away for an autopsy, they started to piece the story together. You've got officials believing that everything kind of unfolded in a domestic violence dispute that night before they were found. Well, with all this, yes, it is maybe a case of crazy karma. Also, at the end of the day, it is still horrifying. One, for Folds, and two, for her friends and family that are never really going to get answers or legal justice that likely would have come from this. She had 3 adult sons and other loved ones that are never going to have that closure. But even so, you're seeing them choosing to remember her for the impact that she made in their lives, saying she touched the lives of many with her heart of gold, deep love for everyone, and a smile to brighten the world. And then also, you had the news today that 4 guys in Connecticut, they figured out how to make ATMs spit out cash like they were hitting a Vegas jackpot. They scored over $500,000. Though unfortunately for them, the FBI was watching and now they've been hit with just a ton of charges. And of course, I should say, all of this comes with a big, fat allegedly. But what it appears that they did is called a jackpotting scheme, and they apparently hit ATMs all across Connecticut. And despite, the name jackpotting making it sound like there's luck involved, it's actually a specialized cybercrime where you have criminals physically accessing an ATM, connecting hardware loaded with malware, and tricking the machine and dispensing cash on command. And according to prosecutors, you had this group working as a coordinated crew that targeted ATMs over a 10-day period in August of 2025. And so you'd have one person who would open the ATM, another installing the device, one acting as a lookout, and the others collecting the cash. And then going to little Ocean's 11, you had the authorities saying that they tried to avoid detection by changing clothes between visits, wearing disguises, and using rental vehicles as they traveled from locations. With their biggest alleged payout actually coming from a single ATM where investigators say they walked away with roughly $136,000. But ultimately, the FBI, Connecticut State Police, and local law enforcement brought them down. The 4 guys now facing federal charges, including conspiracy and interstate transportation of stolen property. And if they're convicted on the most serious counts, they could face up to 15 years in federal prison. Is this so insanely expensive? Turns out you might actually be the victim of a massive corporate conspiracy, because you have a massive new antitrust class action lawsuit that was just filed in California targeting the big 3 of computer memory: Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron. And together, these 3 giants, they control about 90% of the entire global DRAM market, and they've been posting record profits ever since the AI boom required their products to even run. And according to 17 plaintiffs, including everyday consumers and small tech repair shops, these guys allegedly conspired to completely break the free market and drive the price of standard consumer RAM up by a staggering 700% over the last 4 years. And you have them arguing that they got away with this by using the massive boom in artificial intelligence as a convenient cover story. Because while that tech companies are paying out the nose for this DRAM to feed AI data centers, this lawsuit alleges that the big 3 coordinated a massive simultaneous pullback on standard DDR3 and DDR4 memory modules. Right, so the stuff that goes into your phone and laptop, artificially manufacturing a massive shortage so that they could gouge consumers without fear of being undercut. And this actually isn't the first time they've allegedly done this. Right, back in the mid-2000s, you had Samsung and SK Hynix literally pleading guilty to criminal DRAM price fixing, paying hundreds of millions of dollars in fines. But at least for right now, you got Micron denying the claims, and you have experts noting that it is going to be incredibly tough to prove all of this in court. Because you have things like the fact that these companies are actually restarting DDR4 production because the newest DDR5 is being used for AI. Not to mention finding evidence that they actually colluded behind closed doors rather than just independently chase that sweet, sweet AI hype money. And not to sound too jaded or too cynical, but even if the class action lawsuit is successful, I don't actually know if it would be enough to actually change their practices. If anything, what we've seen with similar situation and allegations is that this is kind of seen as the cost of doing business for some companies. And in the meantime, all of the stuff that we want to buy, it stays super expensive. And then it ends up being a vicious cycle because every time we buy a product at the inflated prices, it just reinforces that's the newest bar. And that's even if the cost to make it go down. But that, my friend, you beautiful bastard, is the end of your...
This. Okay, I am here for this. We have the CNN lefty commentators and liberal commentators are absolutely positively fed up. They are done. They are furious, they are angry, and they are now erupting at the MAGA losers who are trying to pearl clutch at the fact that some Democratic socialists won in New York, okay? And the gist of the argument is like, who the fuck are you to call anybody or anything extreme? How about you go to Shut the Fuck Upsville and stay there forever? You are banished to Shut the Fuck Upsville in perpetuity. So here's Charles Blow on a CNN panel, and you'll see, man, he is done. Listen to the sound of his voice, the anger in his voice. Here we go.
This scares the hell out of me for where our politics are
Just
going.
quickly,
Well,
it's
but
an
speaking
animating
of-
force in a few of those districts. It's not an animating force in South Carolina's 1st District nor in New
It was
York
an
17th.
animating force in the Democratic convention in Michigan.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
But here's the problem. I mean, you guys are waxing over the entire thing what's happening here. You talk about dogs that don't hunt anymore. The idea of painting these people as extremists does not hunt anymore, because the moment that you elected Donald Trump and you watch what he has done in the first year of his administration, no one can make the argument that someone is too extreme.
I don't know. This woman goes a lot further than Donald Trump has, and I may
Donald Trump is on tape saying that he grabbed women by their private parts. I don't want to hear anybody talk to me about what somebody else said by calling somebody a name or whatever the case may be.
Okay, let me just interject here to say, I don't even need to go deep on this. I'm going to just put it very simple like this. The Trump regime is quite literally and directly protecting a massive cabal of pedophile billionaires. Trump is in the cabal of pedophile billionaires. They have gone after their way. They have gone after Don Lemon and Letitia James and James Comey and E. Jean Carroll. They've gone after people who put their fucking hand in the reflecting pool water before they've arrested a single Epstein pedophile criminal. That's it. That's all I need to hear. You could name one of the policies of the Trump regime, and that would justify all the left-wing extremism in the world. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a second, but because of Trump's big bullshit bill that they passed, up to 742 hospitals are going to shut. I don't want to hear a single goddamn thing about left-wing extremism. No. Not interested. All I have to do is name one of your shitty fucking policies, and it justifies all the left-wing extremism in the world. So he's done. He's fed up. He's had it. I don't want to be lectured to by a bunch of pedophile protectors that, we're too extreme. How about you spare me? Spare me forever with that nonsense. I don't want to hear from a bunch of people who were just defending the carpet bombing of Iranian...
I mean, oh, but the Democrats called Trump a fascist. It puts him in trouble. Meanwhile, Trump's over here. The Democrats are radical Marxist, communist, socialists. They hate America. They're enemies of the people. They hate America. They're a threat to our way of life. We must be stopped. They must be eradicated. They cheated everything. Fucking spare me. No, do more than spare me. Take every single bit of your faux fucking outrage and roll it up into a big ass ball. Shine it up real nice. Turn that son of a bitch sideways and shove it up your candy fucking ass.
In elementary schools that you guys have gone too far. Oh, have we? Well, I've seen what you cheer at, so maybe us going too far is actually a good thing, because that means we're doing based shit.
I don't want to hear anybody talk to me about what somebody else said by calling somebody a name or whatever the case may be.
This woman has literally aligned herself with the idea of tearing down Western culture and Western civilization.
First of all, first of all, can we stop being stupid on purpose? Can we stop being dense on purpose? The context in which people say
Have you met Donald
civilization
Trump?
these days is quite literally just white supremacy. Like, can we just be honest about that? We're protecting and saving Western civilization. People like fucking Netanyahu come out and say that. What does that mean? We're protecting whiteness. We're protecting the good countries. The countries of the Enlightenment from the evil.
Not only that, but what does that even mean? What does that even mean? Oh, she comes out and says she wants to tear down Western civilization. What does that even mean? What do you mean by that? What? Because what is it that she's against? She doesn't like rampant capitalism? Neither do I. I don't want to tear down civilization. I just want to make the bad stuff better. I just want to protect the common man. I don't see how protecting the common man tears down civilization. I don't understand it. Make it make sense. Make it make sense.
Barbarian hordes. It's not
Make
even
it make
subtle
sense,
bigotry
make
and
it-
racism.
make it
It is
make
just
sense.
open bigotry and racism.
Make it
But
make
she
sense,
wants to
make
tear
it
down
make it
Western
make
civilization. Good. How about that? Good. If that means tearing down Netanyahu's Israel, if that means tearing down MAGA fascism, sign me the fuck up. What are we talking about?
Jared Kushner at Kirk's funeral saying that we are the whirlwind and we're going to come out and they don't understand how we're going to destroy things. I don't want to hear that. People are actually, yes, you go back and listen to what Kushner said at Kirk's his memorial service. Go back and listen to the full thing and tell me that is not a full-fledged white power speech.
Yeah, and by the way, Charles Blow is 100% correct. Republicans have gotten away with saying the most unhinged, the most deranged, the most violent things you've ever heard in your life. Elon Musk is on Twitter, straight up goose-stepping and zig-heiling and Nazi posting, directly calling for violence against his political opponents and immigrants, okay? Nobody cares. Nobody talks about it. The world's richest man, the trillionaire, who, by the way, illegally hacked into our government and cut pediatric cancer research and Meals on Wheels, mind you, is now calling for vigilante violence against liberals and leftists and immigrants. Nobody cares. Stephen Miller, on a daily basis, says, basically sounds like fucking Goebbels. Nobody cares. But God forbid, a Democrat comes out and says, we need to hold Israel accountable for their genocide. It's, how could you?
Vast majority of Americans do not want our country to become a race to the bottom in politics. So Donald Trump, who I criticize,
it's already at the bottom.
Well,
yeah, exactly. Thank you, Charles. Exactly. I don't want to hear from anybody who's right of center. I simply, sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, from the depths of my soul, shut the fuck up. If you, at any point in any of the 3 motherfucking elections, supported Donald Trump, you have lost your right to ever say, the Democrats need to turn down the temperature, the left needs to turn down the temperature. Shut the fuck up. That ship has long sailed, and you know what? You are the captain on that bitch, okay? That's you. That's on you. The abrasiveness of our politics is 100% at your doorstep. You think I wanted to be this guy I am today? You think I wanted to be this crusading, dark, woke guy who's like, fuck you, fuck your feelings, I don't care, go fuck yourself? I didn't want to be like this. I didn't start out like this. I was fucking optimistic. I wasn't a pessimist. I was naive. I was optimistic. I was like, oh yeah, let's reach across the aisle. Let's change some minds. Let's use arguments. Let's persuade. Then I hit the brick wall that is the Republican brain, okay? There's nothing is permeating. Nothing is getting in that bitch. And they are filled with vile hatred and bigotry and contempt. And it's like, okay, if these are the rules of the game, got it. You don't have to tell me twice. I can play by these rules too. And guess what? I'm going to beat your fucking ass under these rules, okay? It's your fault. It's your problem. If y'all want to play motherfucking nice, start playing motherfucking nice, and then maybe eventually we'll decide, okay, we can get back to that place. But we're nowhere near that place. And you don't get to fucking pearl clutch. You want a fainting couch? Because a Democrat said something true. Is that what you want? You want a fainting couch?
Okay, then your side.
It's already at the bottom. But everybody wants Democrats to be holier than thou.
Yes, thank you, Charles Blow. Thank you, Charles Blow. Yes. Our politics is already at the gut. It's already in the gutter. It's already at the bottom. But everybody insists, well, Democrats must be holier than thou. They must be above it all. How about we're fucking sick of that? How about when they go low, we go high? We tried that roughly 5 times, and each time it fucking failed. So now we're going to punch you right in the fucking face, metaphorically speaking. And by the way, when we do it, it stings a lot more than when you do it. Because you guys are like the bully who's all bark and no bite. See, when we actually start barking, oh, we'll bite too. And that bite's going to hurt.
The Republicans are paid by.
Well, because the thing is like the Republicans, if you're on the right, you just say shit. This is the thing. This is the truth of it with what Kyle just said. Let me put what Kyle was saying in a much better way, because it does hurt worse when the left hits back, because on the right, you just say shit. On the left, we actually know shit.
By one set of rules, and then they want Democrats to say, no, you can't do that. You said that you were better. You said that you were the nice guys, so you must run the race as the nice guy and let these guys literally dig into the graves. This is an insane proposition.
Thank you, Charles Blow. He's pissed, man, and I feel that. I feel that in my bones. What he's feeling right now, what he's expressing right now, I feel it completely. It's like, bro, if you guys wanted us to fucking be a certain way, well, you could have acted a certain way too.
You want the Democrats held to this insanely high standard, and you want the Republicans held to absolutely no standard.
Bro. We're just a mirror. If you want to get to a better place in politics, and you want to be nicer, and you want to look for nuance and agreement and have serious adult intellectual conversations, we're always willing to do that, We're always willing to do that. I'm not going to disrespect you and say all sorts of wild shit if you're coming in good faith. But the fact of the matter is, literally nobody on the right is coming in good faith. Literally nobody. Okay? So in that scenario, okay, I'm going to mirror that energy too. So you want this smoke? I'm going to give you this fucking smoke. It's that simple. All right, but we're still not done though. Now we go to Politics Girl, a.k.a. Her last name's McGowan. Forgive me, I'm not recalling her first name at the moment. Put it in the comment section if you know. Shout out to her, though. I'm a big fan. I mean, everything I've seen of her lately has been absolutely phenomenal. So she goes on CNN, and she burst their bubble by actually telling the truth on the issue of Israel. And man, are they uncomfortable with it. Here we go.
Is younger voters are saying, why are we so in bed with Israel? Why do we send billions of dollars? Why do we send, can I just, why do we...
Notice they're all cutting her off.
No, they're not. Let me, the answers are not easy. Listen, why are we in bed? These are younger voters. This is my own perspective. Why are we in bed with a foreign entity where we send them billions of dollars, but we tell our own people we don't have enough? Why are we letting a foreign entity...
Wait, I love how this guy is Noah Rothman, by the way. He's always been a massive idiot. I remember covering him back in like 2015 when he wrote for Mediaite. Every article he wrote was dumber than the next. She's explaining something very simple. People are looking at it going, why are we sending so much money to Israel? Why are we sending so many weapons to Israel when, like, we can't even afford basic shit here? And this guy's doing...
Stop watching this ad. Go to Wix and grab your domain name before someone...
Acting like, you know, you could see by his body language and the way he's reacting, he's implying like she's crossing some sort of a line. Is she perhaps being anti-Semitic by saying these things? That's the vibe of what he's doing. Look.
Why are we in bed? These are younger voters. This is my own perspective. Why are we in bed with a foreign entity where we send them billions of dollars, but we tell our own people we don't have enough? Why are we letting...
See? In bed with a foreign entity. What does that mean? Why don't you just say it? You know what's so annoying about the Israel supporters is they're all such fucking weasels. They're all such weasels. They can't even just, like, say it. Just say it. Say the thing. But, you know, if you do say the thing what you actually think, everybody will be like, you're an idiot and you're lying and you're wrong.
What kills me is right-wingers can never defend anything with substance. Like, they can never defend anything with substance. It's always, like, these performative theatrics. Like, well, I don't have anything actually of substance to counter what you're saying. So instead, I'm going to do, like, air quotes and make faces. Like Scott Jennings. I don't have anything intelligent to say, so I'm just going to make faces. You know what's weird? I have a radio station.
I got a fire alarm at home, but really it's more like a 9-volt battery slowly drainer. Do you want to slowly get rid of your 9-volt batteries? Then buy this circle. I have no problem not listening to the Temptations, which is weird. Listerine hurts, man. When I put Listerine in my mouth, I'm fucking angry. Germs do not go quietly. If you're watching a parade, make sure you stand in one spot. Don't follow it. It never changes. And if the parade is boring, run in the opposite direction. You will fast forward the parade. Xylophone is spelled an X. That's wrong. Xylophone Z X. I don't fucking see it. It should be a Z up front. Next time you have to spell xylophone, use a Z. And if someone says, hey, that's wrong, say, no, it ain't. If you think that's wrong, then you need to have your head Z-rayed. It's like X wasn't given enough to do, so they had to promise him more. Okay, you won't start a lot of words, but we will give you a co-starring role in Tic-Tac-Toe. And you will be acquainted with hugs and kisses. And you will mark the spot. And you will make writing Christmas easier. And incidentally, you will start xylophone. Are you happy, you fucking X?
We all belong outside. We're drawn to nature, whether it's the recorded sounds of the ocean we doze off to, or the succulents that adorn our homes. Nature makes all of our lives, well, better. Despite all this, we often go about our busy lives removed from it. But the outdoors is closer than we realize. With All Trails, you can discover trails nearby and explore confidently. With offline maps and on-trail navigation, download the free app today and make the most of your summer with All Trails.
1 second can change your life. In a car wreck, your health, your job, and your future are
Gotta play
suddenly at
ads,
stake.
yo.
Insurance companies move fast to protect themselves.
Gotta pay
Isaacs
them
and
bills.
Isaacs moves fast to protect you. The firm handles the calls, the paperwork, and the fight so you can focus on recovery. With more than $2 billion recovered, Isaacs and Isaacs fights for maximum compensation. Call 877-ALL-7s or visit WeWin.com. That's WeWin.com.
Services may be performed by other... Progressive knows you think the grass is always greener. Like maybe you ride a motorcycle. But today, it's raining. So you wish you had an RV. But if you did, you'd have to listen to some guy parked next to it at a campsite plays acoustic guitar. Now, before you start wishing you had a boat, remember, your brother-in-law would invite himself every weekend.
Permission to come aboard, Captain?
But one thing that is greener is the money you could save when you bundle your RV, boat, or motorcycle with your home or auto with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and third-party insurers. Not available in all states or situations.
1 second, you're enjoying your first day off in forever. Then mid-lunch, your phone buzzes. A window's been broken at home and you're miles away. In 1 second, everything can change. That's why ADT offers security systems with 24/7 monitoring with tech that helps first responders prioritize your emergency. And with the ADT Plus app, you can stay informed and in control of your home from virtually wherever you are. When every second counts, count on ADT. Visit ADT.com to learn more.
So let's try. Okay, yes. Invert that vertical. I think this will this all day. Damn. Hmm. That's crazy. Yeah, I just want to. See what happens. See what I did. Did I do good? Did I do bad? Did I do both? I just had to make it a big world. Right, so great, man. Ah! shit. Oh, I don't know what my encumbrance level is, but I was running. What passes for running? Oh shit. Sure. Oh no. Oh no. It's not an animal. That's a fucking torso. A torso followed me. Yeah, that's not good. Oh, shit.
Good afternoon, jackass. What do you want? You think you're pretty smart now, don't you? Here's your pay, Einstein. I don't like you, but maybe I'll change my mind if you do something for me. Word of advice. Next time, bathe before coming to a job interview.
Okay. I want to try you man at Z. To there we go. Where do I get a backpack? Well, I brought my backpack because I don't have a backpack.